we are not going anywhere until you tell us who you are.
Crimson Jack?
Well, you're not going anywhere without coordinates. Hey!
The X-Wings! Here we are! We're right over here!
Stop! You want to know who I am? Yeah? You want to know? I'll tell you. I'll tell you who I am. Come on. On the ship.
Tell us now. The truth.
The
truth.
The
The
truth.
truth.
The truth. The truth is, I'm just like you. Okay? I'm lost. I'm alone.
But you are a Jedi, right?
I never actually said that.
Greetings, and welcome to House of R, a Ringerverse podcast on the Ringer Podcast Network. I'm Mallory, Rubin, and it is my absolute pleasure to invite you not only back to Port Borgo, but also back into the House of R. Joining me today, pointing out that that's not a Jedi thing that the Jedi say. It's Joanna Robinson, Crimson Joe.
Crimson Joe. I love that. I love that for me. Do you want to see a quick impression of me watching this episode of Skeleton Crew?
Sure. Yeah.
It goes like this. Crimson Jack, you're looking well. Very well.
Very well.
Very well.
Oh, wow. I didn't know I'd get to podcast with Kim today. What a treat. What a thrill.
Who could be
Fantastic
better
stuff.
than to, she knows her lore.
It's true.
She knows a good-looking pirate when she sees one.
Boy, does she.
She is a bit of a narc, but, we can't all be perfect.
She called in the New Republic before Jack even knocked.
Yeah.
That was tough. If you can't tell from the frankly impeccable impression of Cat Owl Kim that Joe just did, and I think in the first minute and a half of this podcast, 17 references we've already made to how hot Jude Law is, we are here to talk about Skeleton Crew Episode 3, diving into this delightful little episode. But before we do that, before we comment on the very well-made fuel line, some quick programming reminders over on the Ringerverse. Listen, next week, in the middle of the week, the Midnight Boys Pew Pew will be with you to talk about Skeleton Crew episodes 3 and 4. Before that, there will be some Kraven the Hunter talk. Exactly what form it will take, exactly what the timing will be, some active discussions going on right now. Could there be a perhaps meeting of the minds to discuss this meaningful moment in cinematic history? Let's all find out together. It's entirely possible.
Listen, Kraven is incredibly important. Mallory has seen it. I know what Mallory thinks of it.
You do.
I haven't seen it. I'm excited to see it.
Boy.
And then we will discuss it either amongst ourselves or with some other friends.
Perhaps both. Perhaps both.
Mm.
Also on the Ringerverse next week, Mint Edition, we'll be chatting about Sonic 3. This is a movie that is so important to Jomi. He changed his holiday family travel schedule to make sure he could do this podcast. So tune in for that. Here on the House of R.
A legend.
Truly. At the top of next week, we will be acknowledging the film Kraven the Hunter. We will be talking about more of the Rohirrim, which I have not seen yet, but I'm very excited to see this weekend. And then later in the week, we will, of course, be back to chat about Skeleton Crew episode 4. You can watch full video episodes of House of R and Midnight Boys Pew Pew on Spotify. You can also watch them on the Ringerverse YouTube channel. So subscribe if you haven't. There is a little holiday carol from Jomi and Alea and the entire team waiting for you on the YouTube channel. Check it out. Joe, I really liked your witchy.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
The direction I was given was like, be witchy. Now
you
be
know what?
witchier.
You fucking crushed it. You nailed it. You nailed it.
We have some notes on the witch's hat that Jomi was able to source. I believe Alea said something in the vein of it's giving Pharrell. But you know what? This is where we are.
If people are interested, Joanna, in checking that out or following any of it,
listen,
what would you recommend?
Follow the pod. Why don't you just follow House of R, Ringerverse, anything your heart desires. you already mentioned the Ringerverse YouTube channel. I just want to shout out quickly. There's a new Ringer
Yes.
TV YouTube channel
Yes.
where you can find content from The Watch, from Prestige TV. Chris Ryan, Rob Mahoney, and I did a little like sort of holiday stocking stuffer binge extravaganza recommendations video. Chris and I might be doing some like video mailbag stuff in the future. So Ringer TV is something you might want to check out on YouTube. Follow us on social, on TikTok, on X, on Instagram, all over the place to check out all of that. Also, listen, you can email us, hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com. We got emails about merch. We got a lot of emails to talk about, not a lot, but plenty of emails to talk about today. But please send us your thoughts on War of the Rohirrim. We're going to want to know all of your Craven thoughts, obviously, quite clearly. But this is like Skeleton Crew is a really fun fodder for emails from folks because there's just theories abounding. We love a theory show. So send us your Skeleton Crew theories, thoughts and theories, or also your pirate thoughts and theories. I am not as well versed in pirate lore as I am in witch lore. So I do have some pirate stuff go. I have some pirate stuff go for the pod today, but like, you know, if you are listening and you're like, but I have a degree in piratology, or at least I owned that book, Piratology, that was very popular many years ago, you know, hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com is where you can find us.
Fantastic.
What's our spoiler warning today, Mallory Rubin?
Thanks for asking. Here it is. Skeleton Crew episode 3.
Yes.
Skeleton Crew, the television series to date. Anything that's ever happened in Star Wars.
Ooh, okay. Anything that's ever happened in Star Wars.
Could come up.
All
It's
right.
entirely possible that it
table.
could come up today.
I mean,
So that's the spoiler
especially
warning.
when Ben joins us a little later on.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. All right. Those are the programming reminders.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that we'll warm up when we start walking. So let's pod. I don't have a head covering or a scarf, but, you know, stretch our legs. Let's pod. Let's do it.
Hanukkah's mere days away.
Joe, that's the emergency whole demolition sequence, you fool. It's time for the opening snapshot. All right, Joe. Episode 3. Very interesting as an astrogation problem. Written by John Watts and Christopher Ford. Directed, once again, just as episode 2 was, by David Lowery. 39 minutes, including the previously on and the credits. So, you know, it's
zippy.
Again, like a zippy episode. Mm-hmm. What did you think? Give us your amuse-bouche opening snapshot, quick thought, table setting review before we dive in scene by scene. What did you think of episode 3 of Skeleton Crew?
As I mentioned last week, I had already watched this episode when we recorded 1 and 2. But now I have not seen any more, and we were all on the same page. I really liked this episode. Like, I was a little wobbly in 1 and 2, and then I saw this episode and I was like, here we are. This is it. We've got Jude, we've got the kids, they're dynamic together. We're zipping around. You know, it was really fun to go to the pirate port. That was quite fun. Yeah. The promise of like what we get here when we go and visit Kim and her entire workshop and all of that. The promise of Mandalorian-esque sort of planet hopping to see people from, Silvo / Crimson Jack's past across the galaxy as we try to make our way back to Atten is really exciting, especially if it's as fun as Kim proved to be here. And so I'm thrilled. This episode thrilled me, and I think this should be like the pace and the tenor and the tone. We're just sort of like we're moving. We're having little beats for like questioning loyalties or trust and all of that. That's all baked into the premise of the show. But mostly we're just like we're light, we're zippy, we're going, we're adventuring. And Jude is just really phenomenal. Not just extremely attractive, which you and I like definitely agree. But he's just, I mean, like the thing about, you know, he's playing essentially Long John Silver, and we'll talk about Treasure Island a bit more as we go, but like that particular role, whether or not you've seen it in Treasure Planet or Muppet form or whoever, or Charlton Heston play him or whatever, for Long John Silver, you need just charisma to spare, because there's no reason anyone should trust this person, and yet they wind up doing it anyway. And that's the magic.
I can think of one reason.
Okay. Yes, this is definitely our hottest Long John we've had outside of Black Sails. And so I think, that's persuasive, but Jude Law just is an incredibly charismatic performer. And so he's just like extremely convincing, even as the kids very rightly are asking all the questions that we've been asking at home about, like, why on earth would you let this guy on your ship with you? You met him in prison. Or even if you've never seen a version of Treasure Island, this is in the Captain Jack Sparrow model of just sort of like, he's a pirate. He's going to betray you probably in one form or another, but you're going to have a really fun time while he does it. So I loved this episode. What about you?
Yeah, I also thought this was fantastic. Just incredibly fun, energetic, entertaining. I mean, I really liked the first two and found myself quite charmed by the tone of the show and the coming of age kiddo adventure that our space bike riders are finding themselves on. You sprinkle in some Star Wars lore mysteries, this question of At-Aten, the jewels of the old republic. You add in an incredible new cat owl who is a treasure collecting librarian, and then the straw that stirs that Star Wars drink is Jude Law doing all of the things that you just outlined. It's like, wow. That's just a good, that's you like to you like when I break out the Baltimore accent to say brew. That's the brew of a special holiday treat. So this is great. Yeah, I loved the pace of this episode. I think that Adventure of the Week Mando comp was on my mind as well. And, in part because we got to like Brutus setting the bounty. We're, I assume, going to have this very active, this is also like, very Bad Batchy, and the hunt is on, not only like the quest that our characters are on, but they are being actively pursued. And that's like an effective engine week after week. I love what you called out about the prospect of meeting these new figures from whether it's Jod / Silvo / Crimson Jack's past, or like who we're going to meet from maybe like SM's past. Maybe no one, because that hatch was buried, again, not the actual hatch, but the rest of the ship pretty deep. But maybe like there are all sorts of possibilities for who we would come across. And I'm just having a blast. I'm really excited to keep watching and keep chatting about it. It's been super fun. So we are going to today go scene by scene through this really fun episode that gave us not only a lot to gaze wide-eyed at and a lot to enjoy, but also a lot to talk about, a lot to chew on and noodle on.
Just really quickly before we get into the deep dive, I wanted to say we got an email from our listener, Sebastian, who wrote in based on, we actually got a couple emails on my question about like what's a pirate versus what's a smuggler. But Sebastian came through with a Thrones comp, and we love a Thrones. We can't resist the Thrones comps. This is what Sebastian said. You only need to look to Westeros / Essos for the best example of the difference between a pirate and a smuggler. It's Davos Seaworth and his rowboat full of onions, and a pregnant Melisandre ready to birth Stanley Jr., and Salador Sen and his striped galleys. So Salador being a pirate and Davos being a smuggler. I mean, I still think the line is fairly thin, but I do appreciate thinking about Davos, the Onion Knight. So thank you for bringing him up.
Never a bad time to have Davos on our minds.
Absolutely.
I'm not thinking of Jod as really anything but the word that was invoked in this episode. Scoundrel. Yeah. That's the true archetype that we're operating inside of. And we love a Star Wars scoundrel, folks.
Love a scoundrel.
We love it. Okay, Joanna. We learned something last week, and it was that we all have a place in the great work. It is time for the deep dive. Joanna.
Mallory.
This episode begins with some concerned parents in an eerily quiet town who have gathered in a frankly beautiful living room.
Well appointed.
My goodness.
Cozy.
The architecture and the interior design on At-Aten is really quite exquisite. To gather to talk about their missing kiddos, Wendell is so stressed out that we enter the scene through the muffled sound that is conveying the state that he finds him in. Neil's mom, Numa, last week we were like, we got to see the kiddos. Are we going to get to meet Neil's parents? Let me tell you something. One beat with Numa, I know all I need to know. She brought a soothing drink over to Wendell in his moment of need. This is a person of character and quality. Okay?
Yes.
I know that. I mean, how could she be anything but having raised Neil?
What's the most soothing drink I could bring to you if you were ever agitated? Because I know you like coffee,
Great
but that's
question.
not soothing. So what would soothe you?
Might depend on the season. Perhaps where we find ourselves. What's the context? Is it this? Have my children escaped beyond the barrier?
Halo has escaped beyond the barrier,
no.
and you are in a full-blown meltdown, agitated state.
Oh, jeez.
I feel like anything I would bring you, you might just actually fling the cup away and just say, like, we
nothing
don't have time
could
for
soothe
beverages.
me if Halo were in jeopardy.
Correct.
I do enjoy a beverage, though. Perhaps like an Irish coffee.
Okay.
Like a
Decaf.
warm, soothing beverage. No. Not decaf.
I'm
Did
telling
say
you, I'm
decaf?
not giving
No.
you caffeine if you're in a. I already said.
No,
I'm not bringing
I
you
need to
coffee
stay
if you're in
sharp and dialed in to find my missing family.
Numa would never. Numa knows what's best for you, and she would bring you something probably turmeric based, I would guess.
That sounds nice too.
Yeah.
That sounds nice too. I enjoy like an Erewhon smoothie. It's a different vibe. No free ads.
You really would.
Yeah, like, okay, you want to give me
Bring
some
me
healthy
my orange
things.
wine.
Let's do that. I do love an orange wine, as you know. Perhaps a nice sparkling rosé or a sour ale to prepare for what awaits. KB's mom's very worried, and we are too after what we hear in this scene, which includes the note that her life monitor has cut out. Now, at first when we hear this, we're like, beyond the signal, okay, right,
she's chipped.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
But then later, after the security droid arrives and everybody is rightly panicking in response to we're not going to look for your kids or call anyone to ask about them. Very urgent medical needs.
I'm stressed.
I am
Protect KB.
concerned.
Yeah. Does KB need to be home, and why? And will that add to our ticking clock of getting back to Atten? KB's urgent medical needs.
I'm worried. I'd also like to apologize to KB and the fam for saying last week, basically, I would not, as a middle schooler, become a cyborg. Maybe that had to happen.
Urgent medical needs.
Who am I to know or judge?
I mean, we also, since they believe she has urgent medical needs, but we don't believe anything that any authority has said, not the parents necessarily, but medical advice they might have been given on this planet. We're not sure that we
could
trust
be one
any
more
of it.
lie to just keep them
Tethered.
abiding. Yeah. Interesting. What did you think of Farah, your fave, saying, don't worry, the security droids will find them. They always found me and my friends when we ran away as kids. The law-abiding undersecretary, I tried to run away when I was a kid.
Yeah, and she was crushed under the heel of compliance, and here she's become a functionary. No, I mean, I think Farah and Wendell both. I mean, maybe the whole crew, but I suspect chiefly Farah and Wendell are in for massive awakenings about both the systems, but also their relationships with their own children. I do want to go back to KB 1 second and just close the loop and say, I didn't mention this last week, but I think that if we're thinking a lot about the Goonies as we should be, this would put KB in the sort of data slot on the Goonies team, which I'm sure many people have said. But anyway, yeah, Farah, you have a lot to learn, but it gives us a timeline, right, in terms of how long have they been under the boot on this planet, and we think generations. Oh yeah, literally generations, hundreds of years, perhaps, but
sure seems like it. Yeah. On that front of the awakening, the epiphanies that await for Farah and Wendell, surely at a minimum. I really like and I'm like this idea, and I'm excited for this part of it. This was something that we talked about last week. We got different scenes from Farah and Wendell, different specific moments with their respective kids, but this commonality of
parents just don't understand.
Parents just don't understand. Exactly. And, this safety droid who wanders in, claims the supervisor, capital S supervisor, sent him. It reveals the kids have in fact gone in the starship past the barrier and meets their questions. Wendell asking whether they will contact the Republic. We, of course, at home say, but which Republic does he mean?
I said it just like that.
I assume
just
exactly like that.
But
Just
which Republic does he mean? Just like that.
Farah saying, I'm going to petition for an audience with the supervisor. Both of our heads went to the same place. This was on your mind last week as well. This like, are we heading for a Loki season 1 episode 4 timekeepers-esque sequence where we have these robotic figureheads for whatever true force is puppeteering in the shadows? Whatever the specific things are, this droid came in and said illegal, forbidden, and security action a lot, and didn't say anything about making sure that their kids were okay. And so the idea of these parents and these characters doing the things their kids did, that they were worried about. You've got to stay tops in your class. You have to get every single question on assessment right tomorrow so that you can lock in your career for the rest of your life. It's their turn now to violate protocol, right? And try to go into space and find their kids.
I mean, one can only hope. And this is another sort of classic 80s. I wouldn't say Amblin specific necessarily, but like I'm thinking of like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Like often you have
used to watch
the
that
parental
all the time.
figures. I know, great movie. But like you have the parental figures sort of like who are more by the book, straight-laced or whatever, get sort of swept up into the adventure of whatever it is. And they reconnect with their childhood wonder. But then you also have the kids on the other side gaining better appreciation for the protection that their parents offered them. Spoiler alert for the Goonies. The Goonies ends with all the kids sort of reuniting with their parents on the beach and having this just sort of like, I cherish you, no, I cherish you sort of important moment. I understand you better, no, I understand you better moment. And so I think that I'm excited.
Not too old for bedtime stories, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you this, like, we'll have Theory Corner later, but this is kind of what happened with Agatha and often happens. Like the Theory Corner is just going to be inextricable through the discussion of the pod today, and that'll be quite fun. So on this front, what is your prediction here? Do you think that the parental figures will actually go off on an adventure of their own, or will they maybe seek to get put in a brig of their own, a prison of their own? And like, is the reunion happening outside of Adatin, or will it not be occurring until the kids make their way back? Like, I was thinking about the mines again, the Proctor and the mines, and one of those fables that we heard, those exaggerated stories from Fern last week, and like, if those are based in some kernel of truth, like, are Wendell and Farah and the others going to wind up down in the mines beneath the school because they tried to go find their kids?
I mean, I don't know that they'll be sent there, but I can definitely see them sort of like eventually, once Farah reaches a dead end with whatever sort of like official channel she's going to try to go down, I can definitely see these parents snooping and sneaking around in file cabinets or whatever they need to meanwhile, back on Adatin, we're uncovering some of the vast conspiracy so that by the time that Jude and the kids get there, which I'm presuming is episode 6, something like that, we already have some information, unlocked about what's happening on the planet. They don't have to just like start from scratch once they land there, which I think is more efficient, hopefully more efficient, or feels like it flows better than the unraveling of information in the Acolyte, which we found quite frustrating. Right?
It's an amazing streak that we have going of mentioning the Acolyte on almost every pod.
I mean, it's our most recent Star Wars effort, and there are things that the Acolyte did extremely well. Like if Manny Jacinto wants to, travel through time, don't get touchy with me about the timeline, and be suddenly in this show as well, I would not say no.
Who would?
He could just throw on a scarf and join Jude on his adventure. Sounds great.
Wonderful stuff. Joanna.
Yeah.
As the observations about Manny Jacinto and Jude Law have established, you have a keen eye.
Oh, and I love a frozen to freeze a frame.
You love a frozen frame, and you have a keen eye. this mural, we talked a little bit about the artwork last week, that the things in Neil's garage and Farrah's living room that were catching our eye, these feel significant. This opening scene with the parents, it is unmissable that this is taking place in front of this mural. Now, Star Wars fans, we love a mural. We love the mural at the end of Rebels that was incorporated into Ahsoka. When something like this is painted, it is capturing a meaningful moment and a consequential group of people. The style of what we see here in this home is quite similar to what we will see on the scroll that Kim unfurls later, the presence of the orbs and the symbols and the figures and almost like, the talents and almost like the prayer, reverence, a reverential state. What do you think we're seeing here? Are these the founders of Aten? Do you think this is some other moment in time? What do you think we're looking at here?
Yeah, it's, I'm sure you might have been thinking about Hogwarts, and I wouldn't blame you, but I was also thinking about a very recent thing we saw, Wicked, where we get the, sort of the propaganda of the wizard having found everything shattered, and we see a literal mural of the actual people who founded Shiz University. And so this idea of, mural as potential propaganda, this is a peaceful, we see, many different people come together to found this planet. So is this propaganda, or is there, Fern's Tall Tales, a true story underneath here? I want to shout out our pal Ryan Airy over on Screen Crush, because he did a lot of deep digging on the Arabesh that we see on the scrolls that Kim unfurls. And I want to read some of it because I think it helps. Partially, the Arabesh is tough to translate. It's cut off in some places. It's backwards in some places. So this is a very incomplete translation of the scroll. But this is what Ryan and his team were able to dig up. Quote, "The Senate so deemed it good and necessary. The Republicans so founded with her. And the families were nourished. And upon them settled various. Republic financial. But as the jewels, so the great work. And at the great work. The Republic with tranquility and kinship, people of many republic, the wands other worlds that were open, Republic and the Republic closed the hidden Eve, I would say probably but maybe Eve, ninth at Aten founder, and this day where the great work was great worth." So there's a lot that can jump out here, especially Republic financial. That's something to think about. Is this Planet Fort Knox? What are we looking at here? Right. But the many people of many republic, I kind of like this idea of whatever these projects were with these 9 planets, these hidden jewels, were colonists sent, and we made sure that we had some colonists from this planet and some so we see 4 different species or races on this mural, including Neil's folks on here. Was it an intentional sort of melting pot effort to seed these planets with colonists?
Yeah. We see an Ithorian, and obviously we saw an Ithorian kid in the class. So there's a matching going on here. And then, but
who is this Art Nouveau Muka woman? What is this? What is this woman doing here?
Wonderful question.
Han Solo's here. Neil's folks are here. And then there's a Muka girl. I have questions.
Great stuff. I find that because we have, in the scroll, we have the 9 orbs here. We have the 1, presumably this is the Aten orb, and the 9 jewels are reflected on the other. So this idea that because the symbol that we see here on the orb in Farrah's living room is the same symbol, right, as the one on Fern's top of class badge. And so then thinking what did
please tell the class what you have called it.
The Palmarish numeral / electric guitar thingy.
Yeah, the electric guitar thingy.
Which I do believe, if you look at Wikipedia, is the formal name.
Yeah, the electric guitar thingy.
I think I just have, because I have seen A Complete Unknown twice in the past week, and I'm basically obsessed with it, and it's all I've been thinking about, and have been spending a lot of time on. Yeah, exactly. on Dylan at this period. I'm it's all electric guitars to me.
Oh my God, they just blew the doors off the Newport Folk Festival. Pete Seeger was very upset.
Oh, poor Pete. He tried to grab an axe. This safety droids wouldn't let him.
They really wouldn't.
Oh man, no, I guess the safety droids are probably
Is that what, do you think Neil's ancestor in his hand in the mural has an axe in order to cut
what is that thing?
Looks like an axe to me, or a hammer of some kind, or a shovel.
A shovel? It's like obscured a little bit here by the couch.
To dig evil little mines under which to trap people,
to hide the parents.
I mean,
when they try to look for their kids.
There appear to be gaseous clouds here, and the question is, we could have it could be the 4 founders, or it could be the 3 founders, and this woman who looks like Galadriel or a Mooka woman, if you prefer, is this is a very Mormon, sort of the spirit, the angel came down and showed them where to dig, and thus they found gold. I don't know.
Is Galadriel here?
Is Galadriel here?
Galadriel here. Oh man, great stuff. So if the symbol is in the orb that represents that and it's also on the badge that Fern got for being top of class, is that, and these are numerals, Proto-Republic, is that 1?
Number 1.
Does that mean number 1?
Let's start building a numeral. You're not top of the class in number 9, are you? No.
Certainly not, as Wynn knows.
Okay, our listener Corey, speaking of the couch that's partially obscuring the mural here, Corey says, I barely started the 3rd episode and was immediately struck once again by the 80s homages. I noticed the conversation pit in the scene with the parentals. First, jealous. Love them. Want one.
Great.
Second, I find it interesting that the theory they are, quote, stuck in time as the galaxy changes around them means the decor and the architecture is probably reminiscent of old/High Republic. That said, conversation pits fell out of style around the 80s. So in a way, the set is alluding to a fixation on or refusal to move away from other ideals and styles. Just a random thought. Anyway, conversation pits rule. Thanks for reading. Fun fact. This is me, Joanna, speaking.
This is exciting.
No, I mean, it's not that fun. But my best friend growing up, her dad had her parents were divorced. Her dad had a lot of money and was a divorced dad trying to impress his kids. And he had the coolest, craziest house, and there was a koi pond in the foyer that a spiral staircase went out. It was just and I would spend all my weekends there because of course her dad had a koi pond in his house. And
was there a conversation pit?
There was an incredible conversation pit, a massive conversation pit. And I definitely watched a bunch of Ewok based entertainment, not to mention Care Bears from that conversation pit. So I'm pro.
Shout out Care Bears. Remember when you scratch their bellies and they would smell?
No.
A thing? Like a fruity? Was that not a thing?
That was true of My Little Ponies as well. Maybe true of Care Bears. I didn't have a lot of Care Bears, but I did have
I had one, a pink one with a rainbow, I think, on its
I feel like most 80s toys smelled faintly chemically fruity. You know what
chemical cherry smell.
Yeah.
My aunt had a conversation pit in her living room in Cross Creek, Florida.
Yeah.
And it was a cool living room. There was also a spiral staircase, though it was perilous. And I always was worried I would fall down it. I never did, though. And I would have fallen right into the conversation pit, and that would have been fine.
There was a multi-story laundry chute in this place that we used to hurl our little child bodies down.
As a slide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Did anyone ever suffer a grievous injury? Or was it pure fun?
I definitely knocked the wind out of myself somewhere in that house, for sure.
Joanna. It's time to go to Port Borgo so that we can escape from Port Borgo. Which just reminds me more and more of nowhere with each passing frame.
Yeah.
It's bustling as Jude Law and the kiddos are trying to flee the brig. KP, reasonably worried, I'm going to get spotted. If I try to cross the hall here, I'm going to get spotted. And Jude Law, I will be referring to him throughout the podcast as Crimson Jack, Captain Silvo, Jod, and Jude Law. Interchangeably with frankly no rhyme or reason to win. Jod. I know Jod is a little too close to Jude, so having all the other names is helpful. Seems to use the Force to create a diversion down the hall, a familiar maneuver that we've seen from our Force users in the past. How'd you do that? Practice. But not everyone is as keen as having Jude Law in their party as we would be, Joanna. Fern's we haven't agreed on this. Wim goes into what I will be calling Lilia mode, a character that we absolutely loved and adored and were just completely taken with by the end of Agatha. But for a few weeks there was in a real, you've mentioned quite frequently that you're not a fan of how witches are portrayed in culture. And that's where Wim finds himself in this episode. But his version of it is just saying he's a Jedi, 4 dozen times.
Yeah.
That's where Wim is.
Here's my question. Do you feel like based on how the show starts,
yeah,
and sort of based on some of the advertisement, would you not guess that like Wim is our like main child that we're following? I feel like this was a smuggle. And then like Fern is our actual like protagonist child, and Wim is also here. You know what I mean?
I'm sort of wondering what the balance will feel like week to week, because we talked, obviously it was a 2-episode premiere last week, but we talked about how like KB didn't really have the same level of impact and screen time as the other 3 kids all did, and certainly Wim had a lot, and so did Fern. We left those 2 episodes saying that Neil was the most important character in the history of television. I think KB had a lot of minute in all of fiction in the history of story and communication of any sort.
The written word, the spoken word. Yeah. Neil.
But KB was kind of like, this was sort of KB's episode. So I'm wondering if they'll each kind of have like an episode that feels like it's more theirs and they come to the fore. And then the balance feels fairly even at the end. But yeah, I mean, Wim is at the front of the speeder brigade and like you said, all the posters and everything. And certainly he felt like the most central in the kickoff.
Or it might just be more of like a Luke Leia Han situation where like Luke is our protagonist, but Luke is the least interesting of the 3.
Sure. I mean, that's always how it goes, right? Always, yeah. The KB's contributions begin in earnest right away, because KB is the one who voices here one of the things that we talked about last week. If Jude Law could escape the brig at any point, why didn't he? Now he says here, Joe, why escape without a ship? I would point out the hundreds, certainly dozens of ships
but like,
parked in the port that he was able to easily reach one that he had no prior awareness of with this ferry. What would have stopped him from stealing one of these other ones?
I mean, like, aren't they manned? Aren't there people on there? Like, more
they're all getting fucking high in the port. They're
harder
all, like,
to navigate than like
the booze with the
Well, when you go to shore leave, you leave a couple people on the boat to like guard the boat.
But if he is actually a force user, he could best.
We already mentioned that he is a very weak force user. That this was evident by the wobble in the key.
Well, this is my question. Do you think like he just wanted company? Do you think that that's the truth, given what we heard at the top of the episode in our opening clip?
The force provided for ragtag children for him to...
I'm alone.
Yeah.
Fern's like, listen, if you're after treasure, we don't have any.
God.
Right. I really enjoyed how frequently in this episode, the character said out loud the things that we had questions about, had made assumptions about. That's not only is it a rewarding way to kind of forge a tether between the audience and the story, it's like, it can be frustrating when the absence of that is occurring and you're like, wait, why are they not wondering thing X? It's like, it makes you feel like the characters are with it. They're focused.
Right. They're not stupid. Like if we just want they're kids, so we wouldn't call them stupid anyway. We would say they're naive kids who've never been off their planet, never seen a star, like whenever they're doing their best. But like when they're asking these questions, then we're like, okay, Fern is smart. Like Fern is on it. And like it sucks to be far ahead of the characters that you're watching. It can be frustrating to watch them scrabble around and realize 5 episodes in something you figured out in episode 1. So for them to at least be asking these questions is really important. And it feeds back in again. I'm going to talk more and more and more about Long John Silver as we go through, but like it is so important to understand that John Silver gets it over on people, not even people who like don't see it coming. They've been warned.
Right.
And he manages to pull it off anyway. And that's what's really important about this character. It's just sort of like, they need to be questioning it. If they're just sort of like, oh, great. If they're all whims, it's not as impressive when Silver manages to do what he does, you know?
Yeah. And I like that each kid is occupying a different place than on the, they're all having conversations about it. So nobody has the "it never occurred to me" excuse. Yeah. But, Fern, even though KB and Jod have some really interesting moments in this episode, as do KB and Kim, Fern is the one who Jod has to clock, right? He's like, you're going to call me out on my bullshit. You're going to be a problem. I'm going to have to figure out how to operate inside of this dynamic. Like right here, when Jada's like, that's not what I'm after. Then of course later in the episode, it's like, if, I'll do the right thing, but if you should offer up a small reward. Small reward. Wonderful stuff. Wim, of course, mentions again that he's a Jedi, and Fern's like, very reasonably, we don't have a fucking clue who he is. We don't know if he's a Jedi. We don't know anything about him other than the fact that he is now she did not say this, but we're saying very handsome, stranger who wandered up to them in a shadowy crypt with manacles on his feet and asked to see their ship. That's the extent of what they know about him. And then he made a key move, seemingly made a key move. That's it. And
with a very thin
string. For everything you just outlined about how important it is for us to learn something about the characters with the kid group in terms of how they're responding to this, what they're asking, when, why. Equally interesting for us to see how Jod responds to this, because he doesn't miss a beat. He takes the opportunity that, oh, you don't know who I am? Let's introduce ourselves, right? His name is Jod Nawood, which rolls right off the tongue, and I will never be saying in full again.
Jod Na, Jude Law. I'm just saying. Jude Law's full name is David Jude Hayworth Law. One of the most English things you've ever heard in your entire life.
Fantastic.
Yeah, really wonderful. But yeah, Jod Na, Jude Law. It's great. I loved it.
Presumably we have not heard his actual real name yet, and maybe will not for multiple episodes.
I have some questions. I actually think this might be his real name.
You think this is his name?
So we've heard 3 names for him.
Yes.
And there's ways in which I could convince myself that we've only heard 2 names for him, because there's John Na. Please clap. Thank you. There's Captain Silvo.
Yep.
Let's say he's Captain John Silvo because it's John Silver. Long John is a nickname, so it could be like Crimson Jack Silvo, John Silvo, Crimson Jack Silvo. Like that could all be one piratey name.
Yeah.
I would also be delighted by the idea of him having a different alias in every single port that we go into. That would be really fun.
Yeah.
A girl in every port and an alias for every planet. That's fun too.
Hopefully both.
Yeah.
We'll see what kind of story we're getting. We'll talk later with the Crimson Jack. This is a comics character from Star Wars comic who's appeared at a couple different times in the canon, the 70s, and then more recently, the First Order versus Resistance run. I got such a kick out of the Star Wars website, the Star Wars Instagram, all of the official Star Wars channels, sharing that history and then just basically saying, I'm paraphrasing at the end, and this guy's a fucking liar, and that's not who he is. Like, this is just...
When I watched this before I could talk to you about it, because you hadn't watched episode 3, I was like Wikipediaing Crimson Jack and was so excited when like an article came up like weeks ago when I watched this episode. I was like, this is a guy, probably not the same guy. Because you look at his story, you look at like how he looks, and you're just sort of like, okay, probably not actually this Crimson
and different
Jack,
parts of the timeline, because the 70s comics, Marvel Star Wars comics run, like that's basically a New Hope era, and then the other one is the Resistance era, neither of which are this era, but still very, very fun.
Plenty of people have brought up the idea of like the Dread Pirate Roberts as like a title rather than an actual name for someone.
That also feels like, you had posed that last week, right, about Silvo. And I really like this idea that that's part of how he's working and worming his way into a given group. Part of it might be just the greed of trying to assume a certain station, but also like thinking back to our questions about, well, wait, why is Jude Law in a helmet to start this show? And what?
Yeah.
Perhaps that's part of how he's smuggling his way into certain scenarios.
The other question is, like, okay, you and I come out of episode 1 and 2 and we're like, this guy probably isn't a Jedi. And then there's so much in this episode that you and I both sort of swing the other way. And we're like, actually, maybe he is a Jedi. He's at the very least, we believe, a Force user. Yeah. What do you make of the theory that he's was never made a Jedi, but he was a Padawan when Order 66 happened?
That seems most likely to me.
Yeah. So let's say he was a Padawan and they get one of Jude's like very... attractive children to play him in a flashback or something like that. Like, so he was a Padawan. So when he says at the end, like, I never said I was a Jedi, like he was never actually a Jedi, but he's still on the run. in the way that a lot of the hidden Jedi that we have met across the galaxy were on the run after Order 66. So let's say his name is John Nawa, like that was his actual Padawan name or something like that. So Crimson Jack or Captain Silver or all these other names that he has, or the helmets that he wears or the hoods that he puts up and all that sort of stuff is just to keep, because he's been on the run since Order 66. So
I think that seems likely to me. Even things like his very Dinjarin coded feeling about droids. We got the great little moment when he's going through the repair workshop where he briefly interacts. It's the third droid he interacts with is a B1 battle droid whose head immediately falls off. That's just such a Clone Wars tether, like this question of whether his particular trauma and history with the Forces, you know, of the Clone Wars era, etc. That all feels. I like agree. I think the just level of like.
I like the Padawan theory because then it would explain why he's so weak in the Force. Like he never was like fully. He can like make a slight diversion. He can like make a key wobbly move through the air. Like he, you know, he has learned some of what it means to connect to the Force, but he has been disconnected. You know, in many ways for so long, and B never really got to a level where he was proficient. You know,
well, and also just like if you're in hiding after Order 66, then you can't. Anytime you use the Force, it's at the threat of your life. It's at the threat of detection. So, you know, that would...
a little rusty.
Yeah, connect to why he wouldn't want to just... That's like a potential very clear answer to my question of why not just charge through Port Borgo using the Force to beat everyone, right? It's like, because then they know you can use the Force. That would be a potential thing you didn't want at various points in your life, whatever the equivalent of a Port Borgo scenario would have been for him throughout the years. So the charm with which he said after Wim and Neil shout their names and the girls remain silent, iconic. Now we know each other. Just this like devilish smirk. Fantastic. But so also many great moments in the episode. That was one of my favorites.
Yes. And it's like so charming, but it's also like, this is what I've clocked about you. That Wim and Neil will say, "What? That's easy. That's going to be easy no matter what."
You're in my pocket.
Fern and KB, we got some work to do.
You two are going to be the ones blocking my entrance to the Onyx Cinder at the end of the episode. Yeah, exactly. He does his best Han Solo impression by hot wiring open the barrier. Very amusing sequence where everything he does, Wim's like, "You're using the Force," and builds a couple minutes later to when KB is the one who's like, "Hey, a probe droid is coming. We got to like be quiet and nestle into the wall." And Fern's like, "I guess she can use the Force too, huh? You fucking liar." And he's like, "The Force flows through us all." Wonderful stuff. And to Wim, to continue to further ingratiate himself with that already very captive audience, you know much of the Force. It's just a pleasure to watch this grifter and con artist work. Like it's just so fun.
Like, and so all of that. Okay, I'm going to talk about Long John Silver again. The way that John Silver ingratiates himself to Jim Hawkins and the entire crew of the Hispaniola, like when they meet him in Treasure Island, is he claims that he was once part of the Royal Navy, that he lost his leg as part of exploits in the Royal Navy. So he's constantly talking about his stories of being part of the Royal Navy. So this false association with an institution that is venerated, is I thought like a nice little parallel of just sort of like, he's an absolute fucking liar. He was never in the Royal Navy. He's a pirate. But, if he says, "I was once in the Royal Navy, I was once a Jedi," again, Jod says later, God, Jod is such a bad name. Silvo says later, "I never said I was a Jedi," right? But he is certainly coasting on the fumes of Wim's expectations.
Exactly.
Here.
He's letting Wim like print the legend for him and just rolling with it. And that's working on that front, on the Wim front. When there's this great little editing moment in the episode where Jod chases after like the passerby, and Wim is touting to his fellows, championing the quality of the Jedi, right? Defenders of justice, keepers of the peace. And then we just audibly hear Jod pummel the dude he pursued and return with his blaster. Incredibly amusing. I have no notes. Yeah. But we talked about this a lot last week. Because Wim is a Jedi obsessive, right? He worships the Jedi, the idea of the Jedi. And where do you think now, one more episode in, this is heading? Is it that given the particular character that Jod is, that if he is in fact a Force user, has a tie to the Jedi Order or not, that Wim has to confront, okay, not all Jedi are like heroes to be worshipped. It's more complex than that. Or are we, or maybe not, or maybe also, are we building toward a more direct thing that Wim is going to have to confront about his home? Obviously, anything he's confronting with Jod at this point is direct because they're on the same journey together. But like, do you think we're building towards some reveal that the Jedi failed at Aten in some way? Does that feel like something that's going to be in the mix or not necessarily?
Maybe. It feels like a lot. We only have a few episodes. We have to like figure out how to get home, all this sort of stuff. Yeah. But maybe. But definitely, I mean, Wim is due for a rude awakening. I mean, like the way that Luke had to learn things about the way that the galaxy works and the idea of who his father is and all of that. You know, I mean, like that's crucial. And the same way that like Fern's mom, Farah, has to learn, like, you know, these institutions, these ideals that we have blindly put our faith in, that the fairy tales that we've consumed, whether it's Jedi legends on our iPad or, you know, whatever it is we learned in school about the supervisor. What's the truth at the center of all that? And I mean, similarly to Jim Hawkins and Treasure Island, who's like, it's important for him to learn that pirate adventure is not all it's cracked up to be necessarily. So, yeah.
Well, on the important to learn front, what do you think we were supposed to learn about Jod from should we go the way where there are a bunch of people or the way where there are no people and the kids want to go where there are no people and he's like, it's going to be easier to blend in where there are a bunch of people? Is it supposed to show us that he's really savvy, actually, like a left field but innovative thinker? Is it supposed to just show us that he's like reckless and a thrill seeker? What did you make of that?
That seemed more savvy than reckless to me.
Yeah.
Like you have in our notes a reference to the Obi-Wan show and the scene where Obi-Wan well, you were talking about when he leaves Tatooine and just like walked past the guards without like obscuring his face or whatever.
I can believe a lot, but just pulling up a hood leading to people not recognizing Jude Law and Ewan McGregor is not a thing I can accept.
I was thinking about when Obi-Wan smuggles Leia out under his coat in one of the worst things I've ever seen on, like the most comically dumb things I've ever seen on screen. But a reason why the coat one was more offensive to me than the earlier transport scene that you were talking about is he's just all alone in a massive empty light gleaming off the black polished walls and floors space, and that is just so much more conspicuous than trying to make your way making your way downtown through the crowds here.
I honestly thought the odder part of this in an episode that I broadly loved was the kids who had been very publicly arrested after a chase through Port Borgo, just like walking through the crowd again and everyone being like, cool. That was sort of
quite
strange,
fair.
But
quite fair. Is it possible that Jodna is using some feeble, you know, these are not the droids you're looking for, force shielding of them through the crowd?
It could be that. It could be that he's like, they're hitting the bong hard out there. They're not focused on us at all.
The bevs are flowing.
Because it's not until he has to go back for SM-33 that they have a problem. They get aboard the ferry. Am I happy that our adventure is moving forward? Yes. Am I sad to, at the end of this episode, no longer be with our wee ferryman in Port Borgo? Also, yes. Wonderful stuff, as always.
Did you see who's voicing him?
The wee ferryman? Who is it?
Sam Witwer.
I mean, of course it is.
Of course it is. He's the Alan Tudyk of Star Wars.
To be Maul and wee ferryman is just...
Yeah.
I mean, it's the achievement of a lifetime. I don't think it's an overstatement to say that.
You know?
Oh, God. Joe, usually, because Fern says, that was like too easy. And as we just observed, it probably was. But I kind of paused on this moment for a minute because usually in Star Wars, if Leia or another character says something like that, then typically, whether it's in the original trilogy or Rebels or anywhere else, what we build toward is you've been tracked, you've been followed, they wanted you to go. That doesn't seem to be what happened here. It's only when Jod goes back to get SM-33 that they're found out. So did you think there was something more to this, or no, just again, Fern is the skeptic?
Well, there might be a tracker of some kind on the Onyx Cinder that is yet to sort of reveal itself. We don't know one way or another. It might be why Brutus looks so unbothered by...
You think the wee ferryman is a rat? You think he's like, let me tell you what I heard?
I hope right now you're getting actually emails from being like, actually, is not a rat. No, I know what you mean. I think that sorry. Well, surely they know what ship they came from, right? Like, so they had so much time to slap a little tracker on that ship if they could make it their way through the stink cloud. But also, I think it was a way to maybe like lampshade exactly what you're talking about, which is like, why would no one, they're determined to lampshade everything. So when they're like, maybe it was a very thin string that he used for the Force. That was too easy for us to get through the crowd. Right. Just on the heels of you, Mallory, being like, wasn't it too easy for them to get through the crowd? So if the show says it, then,
Okay, I like that.
But we'll see.
Jod, on the way to the Onyx Cinder. He's not familiar yet because he has been in the brig, so he's not current on the latest Lego releases like we are. He's not familiar with the Onyx Cinder yet. He's very greedily like, which ship are we heading toward? Whim, real like, my parents got me a car, but like, I don't really want to drive you to school because I don't want you to see it energy from him. Fern is just outright like, it's a piece of shit. KB adds in, it should not fly. And then Neil, always the best, helpfully notes that it freaks. The stench is unbearable. I just love these kids. This was such a charming little sequence. It was so great. And Jod is like, it can't smell as bad as. And then he sees it, basically a gas plume in the distance.
Yeah.
What do you think he was going to say? It can't smell as bad as what?
The inside of a tauntaun
story where we just cheated out of? Tauntaun.
You think they smell as bad on the outside,
I love that. That would be another nice bit of Han DNA in Jod. I like it. Great one. They're aboard, Joe. And Jod is like, not that Whim needed another reason to love him, but he's basically like, let me just press every button and pick up little pieces of broken machinery and toss them into the middle of the bridge without any concern for the consequences of what I'm doing aboard this vessel.
But it seems like he knows what he's doing. As opposed to Whim, who's just sort of like, this shiny thing, this lever.
This guy's been around. No. This guy's been around. Yeah, he knew just how to tell Neil later. I am going to ask you to fly a spaceship even though you've never done it. Just like, just jingle it a bit. Evade. Who needs driver's ed? You're good. Evade.
Have you seen whatever the intergalactic version of Crimson Asphalt is? Then you are ready to go, my guy.
Oh, wonderful stuff. He tells them where they're heading. An old friend of his. I always love when anyone in Star Wars is like, I'm going to take you to see an old friend of mine. Mm-hmm. Expert on star maps, lost planets, that kind of thing.
She's royalty. Kim, to me, she's royalty.
Dude, when Kim said at the end to KB, call me anytime, I was like, thank God. Thank God they gave us a Chekhov's call anytime, because I feel hopeful that means Kim will be reaching out. KB will be reaching out to Kim, and Kim will be back in the story. I'm not prepared to say goodbye to Kim.
If Amy Sedaris can be in like 5 different episodes of The Mandalorian, we can get more
exactly
Kim.
Right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Though we do go to Tatooine more than
we should.
Kim's moon. At least to this point. Who knows? What'll change in the future? Neil, because he is the purest life form who has ever existed.
Yeah.
Asks about SM-33. He's like, we can't forget about SM-33. Thank God someone said this. None of the other kids said this.
That's why Neil is our guy. The heart. The Samwise Gamgee.
He really is. My God. Jod says, we're not going back for a droid. Later on in the episode, he will basically say, never trust a droid and you'll never be disappointed.
He says, fuck a droid.
Yeah,
he says, fuck those droids.
Puts his empty dinner bowl down and tells SM, clean this up. Woof. Lot of anti-droid, not only energy, but outright moments and lines from
we know
Jod
a lot of droid racists in the galaxy.
We do. We sure do. Fern, never thought to mention that they should go get SM-33, even though he helped make her captain. She did not bring this up before Neil. It's true and fair, but also uses this as an opportunity to call out Jod once again and is like, I thought the Jedi never left a man behind. And I loved this because he starts to get impatient, starts to snap, and then catches himself.
You're conning children. You're conning children. You got to con these children.
Calmly says, first, it's a droid, which is very rude. But then, second, that's not a Jedi thing. The Jedi say. And I love that because even though he's like quite unconvincing as a fake Jedi, we don't know ultimately if it is like a true charlatan act or if he is more of a hustler and has the history that we're sort of theorizing that he does. And also like he's right. This is like not a thing that we think about the Jedi at all. Yeah. But it then made me think like, was it is Fern just calling bullshit on him yet again? Or is this one more little data point about the moment in time at which Aten was frozen?
Knights of the, in the High Republic, perhaps, or the Old Republic, they would never leave a man behind. How many iPad Jedi stories do you think Fern has read?
It's a great question. Very few. I think very few. Yeah. Very few. She's reading the manuals on converters and how to brainwash her own droid.
I was just about to say, now I'm thinking about how she is like the Lex from Jurassic Park, and that makes Wim the Tim who like has read all the dinosaur books and knows all the dino facts, but she knows that it's a Unix system. So yeah, it's very important.
Great stuff. The kids are like, fine, we'll go if you won't. And he, as he'll say later, like you're the map to your planet, so he can't really let them out of his sight to head back into Port Borgo. He can only leave them out of his sight if he's going back to Port Borgo. So he does to find S-37. What?
Close.
Great stuff. And Neil, the best, comes through in the fucking clutch. The clock is ticking down to 0. The game is on the line. And he says, don't forget to look for the rat who lives in his eye hole. This is why Neil is a legend.
This is why he is the best thing that has ever existed in all of his human history. And dare I say, perhaps before humans existed. There were
later
legends
on
of
in
Neil.
The episode when he's feeding Ratty with a spoon. That's the true Grogu-esque, like, most important moment in the history of television for me. That was just great.
I'm sorry to say it. It might seem blasphemous. I think I might prefer Neil to Grogu. It's early.
I mean,
Neil's an actual character.
So is Grogu! Oh, Joe, what did you think of Beef? Speaking of actual characters, did Beef make an impression on you as Jod went back to Port Borgo and Beef was screaming in very Taserface fashion about how pissed Brutus was and how Silvo needed to be found? Did you like Beef?
I didn't care that much about Beef one way or another, but I do care that you reminded me about Taserface, and that's very important to me. So thank you for doing that.
Never missed an opportunity to mention Taserface, nor did that Guardians film. So, what do you think of this little sequence in the repair shop? We get a couple interludes with some droids. We have
Benjar
Pranic entering the fold.
Voiced by Alpha Marlena. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. A reminder that John Watts, of course, did the Spider-Man films, so yes. Could have been, hey, Al, I know you're having fun playing Doc Ock, but do you want to be in a Star Wars?
And he said yes.
Benjar Pranic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if this is the exact. I'm just on the lookout for Treasure Island names at this point. But Ben Gunn is a famous associate of Long John Silver in Treasure Island, and so here we go with our Bens. Ben, I liked this because Ben narcs on him.
Yep.
But also very obviously likes him.
Prefers him to Brutus outright.
Just clearly enjoys him. And so it's just sort of like, so what that means to me is that there's potentially a future where Silvo sort of entices members of his old crew to come join his new cause, right?
Yeah.
They're loyal to him in their hearts.
Yes.
And I think that'll be important.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you could hire Alfred Molina for one scene, or you could hire Alfred Molina to come back and do more things in Star Wars. And why wouldn't you?
That'd be great. Yeah, he like tries to entice him with the big score I always talked of, and who knows, like you said earlier, how many other figures from his past we're gonna come across. Like he sought out Kim knowing that she had him on her shit list. So no history, however fraught, is gonna stop him from seeking what he needs from anybody. So there are going to be a lot of opportunities for moments like this.
You know what she didn't do that is one of my favorite staples that you see in like Willow or Pirates of the Caribbean or whatever, is like he's going to meet some, hopefully like woman, man, whatever, I don't care, is like goes up and talks to like blah, blah, and then just gets slapped in the face. You know what I mean? The sort of like, so-and-so, I haven't seen you in so long, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's been ages. I can't wait. It's so good to see you. And then just get a like hearty crack across the face. And then we get the spin, like the spin of his face towards the camera and that sort of like a jaw moment.
Yeah. We didn't really get to like luxuriate in Kim clawing and batting at the top of his head as she's escaping from his blaster fire. We didn't. She doesn't have the anatomy
for slapping, and I appreciate the scrappy clawing, but I need like an open palm slap. I think that is what I deserve, and you deserve as well.
It could happen as soon as next week.
Fingers.
I'll be thinking of you if it does.
Talons crossed.
No, they can't be crossed. They need to be wide open
for slapping.
For that slap. John flees after this encounter with Benjar, and as the ferry chase is ensuing and he is making his way back to the Cinder, we get a genuinely great moment with the kids. We cut back to them, and they're debating what to do with the new member of their party. Can we hear this clip, Mike?
He floated stuff.
There's a million ways to make it look like something is floating.
Name one.
Repulsor lift, tractor beam, magnets, mirrors. String.
String?
Like a really thin string.
Joanna. Last week we debated which of the kids was most like us. Fern listened to your string insights on House of R and just did this on Skeleton Crew next week. This is just so fun. Like, this was so fun to hear. I absolutely loved this. Did you enjoy this moment?
I loved it. Like a really
string. It's like, yeah, that's what we were saying.
Yeah.
String. It could have been string. The other thing on the Fern front that I found really interesting in this moment was how she just assumes that KB will force a tie with her and the boys, right? She doesn't want Jad to go with them. The guys do. And she never asked KB what she thought. She just said, it's us against you. And then KB's like, and we'll see that KB really mistrusts him throughout the episode, but she's like, we're kids. Like, we can't do this on our own. And not only was that interesting inside of this specific discussion, more broadly in a coming of age story, like this is always such a rich text. The assumptions of young friendship and like, you're going to side with me no matter what. And it's like, well, actually I'm becoming my own person too. And like, when do those things kind of heighten each other? And when do those people find themselves then in conflict with the person who's their best friend who they thought they could count on? So this made me excited for like more, not that I want the kids to be at odds with each other, but I do think that like kind of has to be present in a story like this. And it can't just be Fern and KB versus Neil and Wim. It has to be Neil being like, you told me we weren't going to get in trouble. And like, this is so bad. He has to be the one saying that to Wim.
Much trouble.
Yeah. And Kay being like, actually, I don't just like think the thing that you think because you think it. I hope for more moments like this.
It's very Goonies. This happens like throughout that movie of just sort of the like breaking apart and reforging of various alliances.
Yeah. Anything about the actual escape of the Onyx Cinder that you'd like to comment on?
Yes, I would. Thank you so much for asking. They're caught on fuel lines, and it's it's a very well made fuel line, all this sort of stuff like that. Which is just like there's so many moments. Again, this is more pirate stuff. There's so many clever moments that John and Christopher have figured out how to work in piratical tropes. Yeah. So like the fuel lines,
piratical, is just wonderful.
Well, it's like these are the mooring lines of the tall ship. You know what I mean? It's just sort of like, if you've seen Pirates of the Caribbean or anything else, it's just sort of like, we're still moored to the dock. What are we going to do? Like, hopefully take a hatchet to the line and cut yourself free or something like that. Or just really go for it and snap it. But like to go back to the is it Detarian? Is that what they are? The credits?
Datteries.
Thank you. Datteries. Like I think I forgot to mention on the last pod, like these are just like perfect gold doubloons. Like these are golden doubloons, like, and very specific ones.
Yeah.
Again, to cite Pirates of the Caribbean, but there's a million versions of this. Like in Pirates of the Caribbean, those doubloons are marked with a specific thing so that you know it came from Bootstrap Bill and the treasure and all of that sort of stuff. And so like these particular ones are Marcus in time.
Right.
But it is still like,
yeah,
these are doubloons from a store of treasure, from a tall tale, that they only sing about in pirate shanties. But I just love the way that they're working in, again, these like very pirate hallmarks inside of a galaxy far, far away setting.
Delightful.
Wonderful. Pirate
Are you familiar with the pirate ship at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Stadium?
No.
I'm going to send you some clips.
There's this cruise you can take on a real tall ship around the Maritime Islands. And I've always wanted to do it.
What's stopping you?
I don't know. Let's go.
Let's go. What's stopping us?
I just want to like,
the answer is nothing.
Sing shanties and go around the Maritime Islands. To be clear, I'm not as into pirates as I am into witches. I'm not pretending I have always like known everything about pirates. I'm not, but like a tall ship in the Maritime Islands sounds incredible to me.
What would your pirate name be?
Oh, I thought it was Crimson Joe. Is it not?
Do you like that? Is that do you want that to stick? Fantastic.
What about you? I think Mal really lends itself to something piratical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maroon Mel. No, I don't want to be marooned. I don't want to be marooned. That's not the vibe I want as a pirate. It bodes ill for my vessel. All right, we'll noodle on it. Noodle on it. Should we do the
Hobbits and Dragons
Crew episode dressed as pirates?
Hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com. I feel like I need both. I can't patch it up. I need both eyes for this particular endeavor.
Speaking of outfits, it's mealtime and it's clothes shopping time with John. This was a remarkable sequence in the history of television. The kids boot up SM-33. We get a very now familiar exchange about whether they can trust John. The only difference is that he is like in the foreground of our shot, and so they can't see his expression as they are talking about these things, but we can. It was interesting to like observe him in that moment. But we can't possibly linger on that because we have to talk about the next thing that happens, which is that he moves back into their midst, holding a bowl that he is stirring up and absolutely housing a meal. Another Guardians vibe here, this like kind of like blue jello, like quick snack.
I was thinking of, I guess it's piratey as well. I hadn't thought about that. But in Hook, you know how they like eat the like cool whip that is like brightly colored? Yeah.
Great call. Oh man, I should rewatch Hook soon. I love that movie. Neil's stomach, much like us at the end of a long recording often. I was like, I have been where Neil is, audibly rumbling and groaning as they all sit there ravenous. Remember, they didn't get to enjoy the lobster gut noodles. They had to toss those onto the open flame to attempt an escape.
Now I want noodles.
John at the end of this, sounds fucking great. John at the end of this will be like, there's more, but he waits until he has finished his meal as they sit and watch him. I just thought this was perfection.
I have multiple things to say about this. One is a reference that I'm really excited to share with you, newfound common ground, and the other is yet again a Treasure Islands reference. Well, let me ask you, if you had to guess what Long John Silver's role on the ship, the Hispaniola in Treasure Island is, what would you guess it was?
Is it cook?
He's the cook. He's the quartermaster. And there's this line that he has, at least in the Christian Bale film, where he says, "Come, lad, I expect you're hungry. A person like you is always hungry as sharks." So like this idea of like nourishing and feeding and sort of providing, which made me think of, I don't know if you've heard of this TV show Survivor, but in Survivor,
let's fucking go.
Cook Islands, which is a very piratey season of Survivor. You've got Rupert, right, who's just like fishing up a storm. One of the best moments of my life. Fishing up a storm and providing to make yourself to ingratiate yourself, to make yourself the provider to of a group of hungry castaways is a very very powerful thing you can do on any season of Survivor, but maybe like very specifically on that one. Or like, in Lost, John Locke goes into the forest to hunt boar because like he is a provider of food for the tribe. And so like this is blue goo is no freshly caught fish or boar from fresh out of the forest, but it is providing for these children and sort of luring them in that way, the same way that John does with poor hungry Jim Hawkins. I love that. Come lad, I expect you're hungry. A person like you is always hungry as sharks. You know what I mean? Like hungry for adventure. Let's go.
Yeah. Wonderful. If you were on Survivor, would you try to use the fishing gear to go catch fish?
No, I would be that dummy in Cook Islands who like loses the tip of the spear somewhere in the ocean.
The spear fishing seems really hard. Not as hard as when they just have to use the nets, but really, really, really hard.
I might be able to net something.
I would try to use the machete to open a coconut, but I think that would be the extent of it.
I'd be bad at it, but I would try to learn. I could definitely pry mussels off a rock. That's something I could do.
Yeah. If you had if you got the chickens at some point, would you just let them lay eggs? Or
you gotta let them lay.
Yeah,
you gotta let them lay. Long-term investment.
Yeah.
Why would you? No.
Such an interesting test of patience every time it happens. Yeah.
When they cook the chicken, you're like, but why?
One thing that happened in the current season of Survivor that's airing presently is that I can't remember. I'm sure this has happened. I could not remember ever seeing this at a challenge where there was a bag of rice as like a weight element. And it was a time element. It was cut open, if I'm remembering correctly, and the rice was like pouring out and they were racing against that. One of the contestants like took grains of rice and shoved them in her pockets to try to bring food back to camp. And I was like, this is the most inspired thing I have ever seen. Yeah. And then Jeff was like, Rachel, did you put rice in your pocket? And made her take it out. And I was like, Jeff, should be rewarded for that.
Let her keep that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the exact kind of thing that Jeff likes. That's like ingenuity.
That's exactly the word I was about to use. I couldn't believe he didn't let her take the filthy pocket rice home and try to boil it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
She's trying to provide for her tribe. Yeah.
Great stuff. Wonderful stuff. You need food. You need clothing. And I'm curious who Jod reminded you of more as he took boots off a dead man. The Hound or Isildur? This is like
I'll give him the Isildur bump. Yeah, why not?
All right. Took a knife. He seems thrilled to have it. And then SM comes in and confronts him. I loved the moment when SM, because Jod is talking his shit. He's talking his shit. And SM made himself tall. And then Jod was like, friendly tap on the shoulder. Yeah. Did you enjoy when SM felt compelled to peek back around the corner another time to tack on one more eye?
Directly after saying I won't repeat myself. Is this the moment I put it in my notes here, but I couldn't remember if this is the exact scene. Is this where SM says again, can't say I remember no at Aden?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's talk about this for a second. He says word for word.
Yeah.
The exact same thing he said before. Can't say I remember no at Aden in a way that to me sounds programmed.
Yes.
So couple questions. Has he been like programmed?
Mm-hmm.
Not I don't know where at Aden is. It's I can't say I remember. No, it's also a double negative. So I'm always on, but it's very piratey to double negative. But if we want to look out for linguistic traps, let's just note that there's a double negative here. Can't say I remember no at Aden.
Yes.
But can't say, because I've been programmed not to say that I know where at Aden is. And it's just the way that he says it the exact same way that I think pinged it.
Great observation. Well, and you asked last week like how we thought Fern's aptitude around droids would come into play. Like maybe that's the way. Also, KB's tech savviness could be how they break through whatever programming.
Right, KB also like can talk to technology. So like maybe she can like access something, or maybe perhaps our good old IRAT will like chew through the right wiring inside of his head and unleash this information.
I mean, Ratty is full now because this is when Neil feeds him, but he's going to need another nosh at some point.
Yeah.
So in this scene, we cut back to the kids. They're snacking. Then they have a fascinating conversation. Like, well, wait, is there treasure back home? This was like much like when Elrond was like, well, according to lore, this is just a real Neil has the formal invitation to come on House of R moment because he's like, wait a minute. Let's like look at the facts. What do our parents all do? Okay, what are they analyzing exactly? He says, as we did last week, and everybody, the whole internet was talking about, like, well, maybe the treasurer has to do with the great work. He's trying to piece it together. There's the fun little moment where when they're like, wait, does it have something to do with money? We talked last week, we were clocking the volume of math and counting and metric-driven moments on Adeniran. Yeah, we have a rule, no math.
Couldn't be me.
No math.
No math.
But, you know, it leads to even Wim is like, shit, I better cover these credits with this bowl. So, you know, this is something we're going to talk about like later in Theory Corner and with Ben. But what do you think about all this?
Before I say that, Wim covering it with a bowl and then Neil tipping his bowl over to make it look less suspicious that Wim has done so.
Best. Partnership. What a pal.
I love this kid.
He's
so
wonderful.
Much.
He's wonderful. How worried should Neil be? And how worried are you if this is in fact a funding center? What those funds are going to be applied toward in this stretch of the Star Wars canon.
This also reminds me, like, so if this is funding the First Order, and we'll talk a bit more about this with Ben, but like if they are a money planet,
yep.
Surely that's not how they started, according to ancient scrolls.
Right.
You know, that Kim will roll out with her talons a little later on, but like surely that's not how they started, but maybe that's, you know, they were taken over. It reminds me a lot of this is a dumb comp. I'm sure there's better comps, but I was thinking about the television series Alias, where we meet the spy Sydney Bristow, and she believes she's working for the CIA, but she's actually working for SD6, which is a villainous organization. Don't worry, that's not spoilers. That's the premise of Alias. But like she and everyone she's working there with thinks they are employed by the CIA, and they're like, we're working with the CIA, and they're doing all the things that they're doing, but they think in the name of the CIA and the US government. And so like if all the analytics or whatever's happening, all the abacus crunching that's happening on Adeniran is they think for the great work and for the Republic, but it's actually for the First Order. Yeah. But the First Order is like, why bother, like, you know, yoking them? Just sell them a false narrative, sell them a dream, and let them think they're working for good, and then we don't even have to worry about keeping them in line because the story keeps them in line. Right.
We're bastardizing the original intention and mission of this place, and they just have no idea. Woo! Right. Sheesh, it's going to be a tough one for Farrah to have to confront.
Possibly.
Boy.
It's a theory. Yeah. Hold them loosely.
Hold it loosely. Hold it loosely. Hold your pillow loosely, too. It's time for bed. Fern's like, I'm not tired, and then immediately we cut to her snoozing. But we in this stretch get second on the list after Neil feeding Ratty, the most important moment in the history of television. Mike is producing for us today, and he has kindly doubled the length of this clip so that we can hear it twice. Mike, can we please hear this? That is, of course, unmistakably the sound of sweet Neil squeal snoring. Just...
I feel like this moment in Skeleton Crew is like the most, like the epitome of House of R, because we've got Jod in like this slutty blue shirt, you know, with some like chest hair peeking out. So like a slutty shirt for Jod, and then like an adorable critter snooting and snoodling and snoring.
All of our greatest passions.
It's everything we are, you know?
Wonderful. The little dusting, like a constellation of stars of chest hair, is my favorite. The blue, the particular hue of the shirt.
I feel like I've never seen stars before. It's like when Jorah got a new shirt.
Oh my God.
It's an exciting day.
Remarkable. Yeah. Like the one that he finally got the like little, you know, the teal of the, the little neck cloth.
The neck cloth.
Some color into the mix. Great stuff. KB is awake though. And KB and Jod have an excuse to get us to talk about Han saying, never tell me the odds, right? They have a little conversation about calculating the odds. I calculated the odds, KB says in response to Jod, pointing out that she does not trust him. Not everything in the galaxy can be calculated, he says. Sometimes you have to trust your gut. Now, later, Kim will just say to KB, like, did he tell you to trust your gut? So we get the sense that this is a a move of his, right? This is part of how he maneuvers. But the way that he said not everything in the galaxy can be calculated, there was a somberness there that felt a little bit distinct from the energy we get from him elsewhere in the episode until, of course, the like, I'm also lost, I'm also alone moment later. Felt like a real, I have been through some shit and my worldview and my code have been forged in response to that insight, however fleeting. And he looked great doing it.
He did look great.
It's time to go meet Kim. They fly to a moon that is in the shadow of the swirling white and blue and purple of this planet. And there was a little moment where Wim is coming down on a cargo lift and Jod is basically like, this is his version of Wendell being like, aren't you too old for bedtime stories? Like he's like, stop fucking around, which made me sad. And I wonder if there will be more moments like that that lead to Wim feeling a little bit less enchanted with him. We're treated to another.
What does he say? What does he say to him exactly there?
Like it's a cargo lift. Like, just makes him feel kind of bad for playing for
what are you
engaging
doing? We're
in
playing.
play.
It's a cargo lift. Come on. Okay,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. It's not. Please stop touching those buttons and those levers, which is what everyone is saying. Slightly different.
It's a whole demolition sequence, you fool. Kabu points out it's pretty chilly here. It's brisk, and Jude Law sweeps a scarf around his head and ears for warmth and then tells the kids, like, get to walk in and you'll warm up.
Benedict Cumberbatch wishes. His Sherlock wishes he could.
Oh, man. This was sensational stuff.
They do this, like, beautiful walk across the, like, the moonscape and stuff like that. That's incredible. It's giving E.T., it's giving Stand By Me, it's giving all this sort of stuff. It's giving Hakuna Matata. It's giving whatever you want it to give. But also the shot of him outside of Kim's door, that's the first promo. That's like the main promo shot
that's right.
got of
the lower
Skeleton Crew. Yeah. We've been waiting for it for years.
We truly have. It has been a long time since we glimpsed that and the shot to the top of the hype meter. He has this, like, he obviously doesn't trust her. He tries to position it to the kids as like, I don't trust her. She might stab us in the back. Oh no, not literally. Like, you'll understand when you're older. But really, it's like he knows that she doesn't trust him. So he's prepared for conflict because he knows what standing he will be found in. And before we even get to meet Kim through Crimson Jack's eyes, we see her call in the New Republic to have him arrested. She's like, did he kidnap these kids? Like, this is not a person that she holds in high esteem.
I want to mention Kim and Kidnapped really struck me because, like, so Kim, which has a Y, but not where you think. But like,
a proud Disney Plus tradition. Great one.
Kim made me wonder. So kidnap is just a word you can use, but Kidnapped is also a Robert Louis Stevenson boys adventure book, and Kim is the name of a Rudyard Kipling boys adventure book from like a similar time period. So I don't know if they were trying to like invoke Kipling and naming this owl cat Kim with a Y, not where you think. But I was like, oh, Kim said kidnapped, and we're in Treasure Island, and these are all sort of like boys adventure. And something I've been obviously digging into my Treasure Island lore to prep for this, and something that I saw someone like analyzing the character of Long John Silver in a way that really struck me is Robert Louis Stevenson, of course, also wrote Jekyll and Hyde. And so this idea of like the duality of man, Long John Silver is such a compelling character because he like does have a genuine soft spot for Jim and does have like genuine, like, he's not just a villain sort of thing, but he's got, and you just kind of like can't always parse the motivation for what he's saying. And he's similar to like what we love about Loki. Yeah. There is like genuine heart there, but there's also constant schemes there. And
lots of schemes?
The sort of like Jekyll and Hiding, prototype, I think is really interesting.
I love that. I also loved when he lowers his hood and Kim said the thing that you opened the pod with, like, you're looking well.
Very well. I also wonder, okay, so you wrote in our notes, and I thought of this as well, Avatar, there's the owl who is the librarian in the library in the Hidden Library in Avatar, The Last Airbender. I was also thinking about Archimedes from the Disney animated Sword in the Stone.
Mm-hmm.
And then also just the way that Alia Shawkat, who voices Kim, she sounds. Were you? You're not exactly my age. Were you a watcher of The Dark Crystal? Did you watch The Dark Crystal?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
So towards the beginning-ish of The Dark Crystal, our Gelfling hero, Jem, while he's on his way off on his adventure, encounters this like wizened old woman named Aughra, who sounds a lot like, you know, she was like, 1,000 years ago, that was a great conjunction. That's when the crystal cracked. That's when the Skeksis appeared. You know, like the voice that Alia Shawkat is doing here is so Aughra coded to me. And there's a moment so he follows Aughra into her sort of like workshop, and there's a moment where he walks in and there's this like huge astrolabe like moving around and stuff like that, and it just like reminded me a lot of them walking in and Kim's on her like sort of whirling telescope sort of contraption, stuff like that. So I was wondering, while we're in the 80s mood, if we are doing a little Dark Crystal along with everything. I love Aughra, one of my all-time favorite puppets that has ever existed, because she is
sensational impression that you just ripped off. That was right off the dome. You did that. That was great.
She's quite a character. I love the Dark Crystal. My dad used to do this like really scary impression of the Skeksis that would, you know, Skeksis is very terrifying.
Did you get any Citadel Library vibes from this when she like flies up to get the scroll later?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it felt,
you know,
Citadel-y to me as well.
We're always invoking if you're ever invoking astrolabe, I'm gonna think about this.
How could you not?
For sure.
How could you not? On the list of the long list of things that establishes Kim as just an instant icon, I think her saying, "You've brought some children. Why, Jack? They aren't all yours, are they?" has to be high on the list.
Yeah,
this was frankly remarkable.
Once again, Kim is also excited for the open hand slap that is surely awaiting.
She can't wait.
Jack,
she's like, I could try it with the wing, but it wouldn't be as effective.
It wouldn't.
What do you think the history is between them? Because he's like, I know I left it in such a mess between us. I couldn't come back until I had something really special. Did he fuck her on a score? Did he fuck her in some other way? Like, did these two fuck? I got some vibes. Do you think these two?
I bet if we asked Jude Law, he would say yes.
I felt that there was a past between them in many respects. Very Marion in Indiana Jones sort of situation. Yeah. Did you notice? Did anyone tickle an elbow at any point? I didn't clock it, but did it happen? It could have. It could have.
You know, she's got gadgets and gizmos aplenty, trinkets and tokens from 1,000 different worlds. It feels like you stole something from her. That's what I would guess.
Yeah. Not bringing her something that they had agreed he would bring her, or stealing something feels likely. Do you want a Kim spinoff to learn how she got the trinkets and tokens from 1,000 different worlds? Feels like something we deserve.
Yes.
I agree.
Our listener Jenny asking the important questions. Just checking to see if Mallory gasped as loud as I did when we first saw Kim. Kim is everything, and yes, I already checked. And there's a Funko Pop, and yes, I already bought it.
Wow.
No free ads for Funko, but
I had not looked into the Kim Funko Pop yet, but I know what I'm doing when the pot ends. I'll tell you that much.
But maybe hold off.
Oh.
Adam, if you're listening.
I'll also hold off.
No. I didn't get you Kim. I have something else for you that I'm very excited about. I'm not buying you. I already bought you a Funko Pop this year. I feel we should cap it at 1.
You did. You got me an incredible Funko Pop, though. Like an all-timer.
What did I get you?
You got me the Viserys with the gold mask. Yeah.
I know.
It's like the best.
I just wanted you to tell the listeners what a good friend I am.
You're wonderful. It's a cherished possession of mine. I absolutely love it.
Adam, you have time to
it's true.
Wrap Kim up and put her under the menorah. So isn't it on Christmas?
Yeah.
Thereabouts?
He's got a couple weeks.
All right, Adam.
Get on it.
Don't say I never gave you anything. Adam doesn't need my help. Adam's the best gift giver that's ever existed. So,
he's I would say the second best gift giver in this household, but he's we're very competitive, as you know. We get very competitive. Very competitive about the gift giving. He is a great gift giver.
I don't get photos of Adam's haul. I get photos from you of your haul, but
that's true.
So this year at Hanukkah, you should do a photo of Adam's haul so I can judge who's the better gift giver in your household.
Oh boy. Okay. That's a great idea. Now I feel a lot of pressure. This is good. This is the fire under my ass that I needed.
Make a boast, a claim like that, you got to back it up.
It's true. It's true. As I've told you before, I think I'm like 85% really great gift giver, and then 15% this is just something I want for myself. Like when I signed him up for a wine club, and he was like, "Yeah, this is not for me."
So I would like to go back and say I think that Adam is the best giver in your household, because I don't think he
is great.
Buying endless shirts in your size for himself. You know what I mean?
True.
Do you guys work on the Legos together, or is it a solo project?
We've tried a couple times. It hasn't gone well.
Yeah.
I know that'll shock you to hear.
I could have predicted.
I know that'll shock you to hear. Well, it will last like 6 minutes, and he's like, "Just fucking do it all yourself if you don't want me to help." I'm like, "Cool, great. That's sort of the outcome I was hoping for." Oh man, yeah.
Oh my god, I can see it. Yeah. Oh wow, amazing.
Oh God. Kim, she asked what the kids are there for. It's not to build Legos, it's to find Adeniran. And she basically does the dragon screech sound effect that like vanishes and comes back with the scroll. Yeah. And she drops a doozy on us. Mike, can we hear this?
Adeniran is very interesting. As an astrogation product.
Is that a map?
No, my dear boy. You see, your home has been purposely hidden from the rest of the galaxy. There is no map to Adeniran. No, this scroll depicts the jewels of the old Republic. Planets of wonders kept hidden for their protection. Long ago, they were all destroyed, except for one, Adeniran. Now only remembered in children's stories, pirate shanties, and rumors believed by fools. But I've always believed.
Great stuff.
What do you make of the fact that our babe Kim has like literal scrolls? Because you don't see scrolls a lot in Star Wars.
Yeah. So it's a more digital pursuit typically.
Yeah. We're looking at data files and like, digital archives. So this is like old.
And this is another spot where when we get like jewels of the old Republic, this is something we were tracking last week. Like this is capitalized. It's not like small o old. It's like the old Republic. Like we will hear her say when she's talking about the symbols, like proto-republic, when she's talking about the numerals, like we are way linking to something way back in the history of the galaxy. So that's all like really interesting. We're going to talk about all of this and what this might mean with Benja. Is there anything else before we dive into it with Ben, though, in this stretch here that you want to observe or hit on?
I think, once again, in sort of like a piratical language, calling them the jewels.
Yeah.
We're not literally calling them jewels, but calling them the jewels is really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, in school, we learned about Coruscant and Alderaan. Alderaan missed the war, did you? What war? Fascinating. Oh, no.
Part of the great work is that we're supposed to stay inside the barrier. Great work, barrier?
No child left behind except all the children of Adeniran who know literally nothing about history.
It's concerning. Yeah, they're building the mystery here in a great way. They really are.
Sarah McLachlan would say, listen, Neil describes the barrier, right, as this cloud, like the cloud swirly barrier thing, which again takes me back to my Brigadoon comp from last week. Again, the Shrouded in Mist is something that I really like. But also I was thinking about the M. Night Shyamalan film The Village, which again is like a generation is shielded from the outside world. They're all constantly shrouded in mist in that village, but like they're shielded from the outside world by a generation of people who think they are doing the right thing by keeping them sort of locked in time. Right. Spoilers for The Village, an M. Night Shyamalan movie that I actually genuinely love. So
yeah, there you go.
Deal with it. Signs of the Village are good films, and I will fight anyone.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Signs. Yeah. In addition to the In addition to Alderaan and Coruscant and the Palmarish numerals that we briefly mentioned before and are going to talk about more with Ben, I also just thought, I mentioned this already, but the you are the map moment with Jack so really stood out to me because obviously like that is, he says that right before Kim engages in a little bit of like Q&A to try to narrow the scope of where this might be. That's very effective because they get down to just 10,000 planets in a jiffy. But that gave me really, really strong Chiss Navigator, Sky Dash Walker vibes, like from the Thrawn novels, where the Force sensitive among the Chiss, like the way that they can navigate through space is by using the Force. And I'm like, is that going to be how they find Ad-Atten, that Jod as a Force user, or if like Wim ends up being a Force user or something? Like, are they priming us for something perhaps a little bit more like literal there, with the children's connection to this place being how through the Force they are able to like make their way back? I don't know.
You're just asking questions, and I'm
just asking questions.
You're just asking questions.
I'm just asking questions and saying, signs, yeah. Oh, Joe, it's time to evade capture because Jod's like, did you solve it? And Kim's like, yes, I mean, no. And he realizes that she's stalling, finds like, the radio transmission. It all goes bad very Wow. It all goes very bad very quickly. And she says, Crimson Jack is a scoundrel. All he wants is your treasure.
She says, Crimson Jack is a scoundrel. All he wants is your treasure.
Oh, man.
Which reminds me of again, in Treasure Island.
You're really good at that.
What?
That voice. You have it down. That's great.
In Treasure Island, there are many people who tell Jim not to trust John Silver. Like Billy Bones, most famously, says, "Keep your weather eye open for a seafaring man with one leg." You know, like they're told, these children will be told, I'm sure, again and again, not to trust Crimson Jack.
Right.
And like whether or not this whole thing ends the way that Treasure Island ends, which is different depending on which version of Treasure Island you're watching or reading. Like that really fed into me my Loki comps, right? Everyone's telling them that Captain Jack is a scoundrel and he's a bastard and he will cheat them and rob them and all this sort of stuff like that. It's like,
use your head, get the truth.
Can a leopard change his spots? Can what makes a Loki? Can you change? Can you grow? Or will you only ever betray?
Key lime pie?
No, it's just blue goo in a bowl.
Any McDonald's?
That's it.
No. Okay.
No for yet. I just noticed that you and Sean Fennessy do that exact okay. You guys both do it the exact same way, and I'm wondering who stole it from whom.
No free ads?
No. Okay. That's a very Mallory and Fennessy thing.
Ooh. Great
I bet
question.
he stole it from you. I bet he stole it from you. That's my guess. My loyal guess. And Sean doesn't listen to this podcast, so who cares?
We probably both got it from someone else. Who knows? We've known each other for as long as Kim and Crimson Jack have known each other. Eons. They run. The X-Wings are in pursuit. We already talked about that little moment with KB and Kim, but if there's anything else you'd like to add on the Kim front before we leave her?
Not in the Kim front, but Joanna.
Jodna,
calls them the goons. Kim's goons.
Yeah.
A good old visit from the goon squad.
Yeah.
Our friend of the pod, Matt Midovich, who writes a TV Line, did a great interview also with the showrunners of the show. He emailed us to be like, the Goonies, and I'm like, I'm not mad at it, Matt. I support it. But what I also love is in a pirate tale.
Yes.
The pursuers are usually the Royal Navy. And so I like that it's like Blue Squadron is here. And like Blue Squadron are the good guys. But we're on the pirate side of things. And so we're like, these are the antagonists here. We gotta evade the Blue Squadron. in order to keep having our adventure, which is what we want to have.
Right.
And so I really like positioning like ships that we recognize as being noble and all this sort of stuff like that, but they're the pursuers.
And like it's another Mando tie too, because obviously like Mando will work with some of these pilots at some points in the 3 seasons so far, but like also
correct scoundrels.
Why do he and Grogu end up tumbling into the icy spidery abyss? Because he's like, trying to evade the New Republic. So yeah, that feels like a nice kind of like thing that's happening in this timeline as well. And of course, even though we have New Republic figures who are in other slices of the story, people were rooting for and aligned with, like we are, as we've talked about across all these shows, building toward the crumbling of the New Republic and the failure for the New Republic to thwart the rise of the First Order. So
one might argue the British Empire also not something that you necessarily want to fully rubber stamp and endorse. Indeed.
We get toward what we hear at the top of the episode, Joe. KB and Fern refuse to let Jod board until he tells them who he is. It's the clip at the top. The truth. The truth is, I'm just like you, okay? I'm lost. I'm alone. But you are a Jedi, right? I never actually said that. Anything you want to add on this? Obviously, we've talked a little bit already about where we both are on the theory front regarding his past. But what about that I'm lost, I'm alone. Anything else beyond maybe being a post Order 66?
That feels true.
In hiding.
That just feels true.
Yeah. Love this guy.
And like any con artist, whether or not he's like, to what degree is the con knob turned up to 11? It's always best to hide those things inside of a truth,
Yes, absolutely. Much like when he was offering up the deal in the partnership, the truth is I would like that reward. The con is I'll do the right thing. But maybe he will at the end of the day. That would be nice.
Reward.
That would be nice. The pilots and Kim have a little exchange. She's like, I cannot believe you let this fucker go. And they're like, we didn't want to shoot down the kids. I will note that Wim and Fern, who are arguing over who got the shot, who landed the shot, didn't, but easily could have killed a pilot of the New Republic. They were firing freely. That was wild to see. But the Onyx Cinder made its way to the other side of the moon, rising sun, and jumped. Our crew is safe. They are ready to head into another adventure next week. Will the bounty hunter Super Descent arrive? Will Kim be back? Will Jod find another incredible
scarf,
pale blue hue to try on? Who can say? What we know is that there are a lot of hidden planets in the history of Star Wars to talk about, and so we're going to do that now with our own Benjar, Ben Lindbergh. He's here. It's Ben Lindbergh.
It's true. I'm here.
Ben, there was a Ben in this episode. Alfred Molina voiced Benjar Prenick. So would you like us to formally start calling you Benjar Prenick? Do you have a thought on how this fits in with your other Ben nicknames?
Benjar Lindbergh?
Yeah, that seems like a demotion to me. I'm going to keep Kenobi if it's all right with you.
All right. Fine. Fair
enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. The space pirate energy isn't for everyone. Up to you.
It's a pirate life for me.
Ben, we have a rich text today. You were here to chat with us about a brief history of hidden planets in Star Wars, given the thing that we had all theorized about last week that was confirmed in this episode. What a rich, nebular, gas, obscured text. Help us penetrate these swirling, sometimes visible only at night clouds. What do we need to know?
So obviously Skeleton Crew is an ode not just to Amblin Entertainment, but to Treasure Island, and by extension, Treasure Planet. Sort of the same story. In those series, you have the protagonist Jim and pirate Long John Silver. Here we have protagonist Wim and pirate Silvo, one of the names that he goes by. And I guess we could connect Atten to any number of lost civilizations in myths or in fiction outside of Star Wars, like Atlantis or Shangri-La or even Neverland, where we get pirates and Smee, and in Skeleton Crew SM33. But there is a long lineage, as you alluded to, of secret locations and lost planets and treasure hoards in Star Wars. So if we can quickly run through a few, it could come in handy because you never know what could be a clue.
Let's do it. How are you going to bucket these, Ben?
So I think we can cover movie versions of this and then canonical versions outside of the films.
Okay.
And then we can venture briefly into legends. We can just dip our toes
the
into
outer
those,
rim that
those
is
deep
the
waters,
legends.
wild space.
Are you starting with movies because that's the only way to get a Star Wars movie in our life right now? Is that why?
Yeah, desperate times. And this tradition of secret places and hidden spaces goes back really to the beginning of the franchise, if you think about it, which I have. In A New Hope and Empire, we have hidden rebel bases in remote locations. You got your Dantooine and your Yavin 4 and your Hoth. So right from the start, the good guys have to take shelter in ancient ruins like Legends of the Hidden Temple. And in the prequels, of course, Camino is a planet that's been deleted from the star maps in the Jedi Archive, contains a whole hidden army. Lost a planet, Master Obi-Wan has, my namesake. Quite careless of him.
I think you mean Detective Kenobi.
Yes, exactly.
Favorite
True.
Kenobi mode.
Exactly.
Led to a treasured arc for that character for all of us. But in the sequel trilogy, we have Octo and Exegol, these secret, sacred worlds of the Jedi and Sith, respectively. And just to get to them, you have to hunt for a wayfinder or piece together clues from old texts or
Daggers.
dig up daggers and hold them up to the ruins of the Death Star and get a droid to translate the forbidden Sith texts. We all remember that movie.
Unfortunately, Ben, not to venture into the hidden planet that is Theory Corner right away, but what do you make of the theory that Adeniran is actually Exegol, that will become Exegol?
I mean, it seems like a lot would have to happen in a fairly short span of time for this planet to transform into the Exegol that we know and love. But
some planets are swampy bogs now. You know
it's
what I
true.
mean?
It's
exactly. Sulfurous swampy box. How different really is the frankly resplendent tub that Neil was luxuriating and bathing in from the little crane that was holding Clone Palpy? How different are those things really, ultimately?
Despite the barrier and the swirling crowds, I'd say the climate on Adeniran is an improvement over what we've seen of Exegol. But
do you think that dome that we see in the wide shot of Adeniran, and by Adeniran I mean, of course, the one town that stands in for the entire planet,
right? Yes.
Do you think that dome could be the arena where we are chanting and ominously murmuring?
Wow,
I don't love it, but I don't hate it as a theory.
Is Clone Palpy the supervisor in this scenario?
Ooh.
Jeez. Let's ask the security droids. Let's get them to say something other than illegal.
I'm certain
Forbidden.
they will be very forthcoming.
Yeah.
They seem like a forthcoming type.
I could see, we got some, to open this episode, some nice shots of the largely empty town. And, you can see Kylo Ren just running down those streets in his all-black athleisure. It could happen.
Sure.
We do have Wim and the kids do a slide very similar to the Ben slide, and just keep it in mind.
Yeah, lots of parallels here. You're picking up on something compelling. But these planets, Octo and Exegol, they contain treasures like cloning equipment and a massive fleet, or porgs and green milk. Also treasures in their own way. Yep. Mm-hmm. And there's even more of this trope in the current canon outside of the movies. How much did we discuss Mortis and Peridia during Ahsoka Season 1? Yeah. And I'm sure we will return to those topics in Ahsoka Season 2. I think I did a lore segment about Peridia being in another galaxy, inaccessible except by Space Whale or the Eye of Sion because of this galactic barrier of hyperspace anomalies. So that's an example of what we're talking about. Or Mortis, the home of the Mortis gods, is seemingly outside of space and time entirely. So you can't really visit voluntarily. It's kind of invite only, even more so than Adeniran seems to be. And Mal, you reminded me off air about Lyrasan, the original homeworld of the Lasat, the species of our boy Zeb from Rebels, and also the
Callus
Mandoverse.
is always on my mind, and so Lyrasan is always on my mind. Yeah.
Callus is on your mind for all manner of reasons,
all
I'm
sorts
sure.
Of reasons.
Yeah. But that's the original homeworld of Zeb's species, the Lasat, hidden behind a nebula, mythical, forgotten even by other Lasat. Also, Jedi Survivor players may be reminded of Tanalorr, this peaceful paradise in the Outer Rim, which was discovered by Jedi during the High Republic era and was the site of a Jedi temple until the Nihil, those marauders we talked about last week, invaded and drove the Jedi out. And stop me if this sounds familiar, but centuries later, not long before before Skeleton Crew is set, Tanalorr is remembered as a mythical treasure planet until it's rediscovered and set up as the endpoint of the Hidden Path, the underground network for Force-sensitive refugees. So I've seen the Izat and Tanalorr connection and speculation out there, because basically in Star Wars, anything that is akin to something we've seen already, we immediately leap to the conclusion that it is that thing, which, to be fair, is often the case.
It is often the case. But here's my question. Do you want it to be? Like, we already have connection to other Star Wars properties with our very favorite character, Vane, crossing over from The Mandalorian, Mando Season 3. But like, how much, we talked about this a lot. We talk about Acolyte. We talked about Andor. God. How much do we want this to connect to the larger story telling the Skywalker saga, or how much do we wish to keep it in its own little pocket of the universe?
I'm generally in favor of keeping things separated, and I'm almost always disappointed. So I expect to be disappointed once more, although it is nice to be reunited with Vane. It's been too long.
Yeah, but it has been. Sure has been. It's an interesting episode to ask that question inside of discussing, because we got, we have the first, my treasures from 1,000 worlds, and Fern's very innocent. There are 1,000 worlds, but then we build toward, okay, let's eliminate, let's deduce, let's narrow the scope. They've gotten it down to 10,000 worlds. It's like, fuck, that's a lot. Actually, no, we eliminated 99.9% of them already. I thought that was an interesting way inside of the episode to remind us of how big the galaxy is, how much is in it, and how titanic the task of trying to find this one place would be. And so, kind of marry the show's very clear snapshot of that math and that challenge with the reality of often the same handful of this somehow Palpatine return handful of things coming into play is kind of fascinating to think of those things in tandem.
I think a trade-off. I was thinking, and I was like, oh, I don't want this to connect with anything bigger. I want this to be its own little cozy story. And I was like, then again, this all feeds into somehow Palpatine returns, or has to connect to Thrawn, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, well, then, do I get Jude Law and Neil in the movie? And if that's the case, is that a worthy trade-off?
Oh, my God. What about Ratty? Can Ratty be there, too? I guess if Neil's there, we should expect Ratty to be there.
I was thinking about it if the movie is feels like an Avengers movie where all of these TV shows are feeding into it. Wouldn't this be the Guardians of the Galaxy come in and we get the the piratical element? I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying this would be a consolation for me.
I love it.
As long as Vane makes his big screen debut as well. But this is sort of a familiar explanation, this Tanalorr explanation. It's inside a nebula. It's hard to navigate to. And when the kids in Skeleton Crew describe the barrier, our owl queen, Kim, speculates nebular gases. Perhaps that's why the planets were made hidden. Not sure if she's right, because the barrier does seem to have a technological component to it, and it's wrapped right around the planet like a regular cloud, not a nebula or maybe an artificial cloud of some sort. But I can see why she'd think that, because there's plenty of precedent. One more canonical example in the High Republic era is a place called Planet X, not to be confused with Groot's homeworld, speaking of Guardians, or the possible 9th planet that some scientists think exists somewhere in our solar system. There might be a secret treasure planet in our own solar system. I'm not a crank. This is actually true.
You think it's just full of datteries?
Maybe. This is actual science. There might be a Planet 9 out there that we just haven't been able to spot yet.
Dumb billionaire who gets there first and not NASA.
But the Planet X in canon in High Republic, it's a living world. It's protected by a barrier called the Veil, which is sort of a sentient immune system in a way, and is beautiful and disturbing in kind of a scavenger's reign or raised by wolves way. And lastly, I'll just shout out a few locations that were prominent in Legends, all of which are kind of canon now in that their names have been mentioned at least. And don't want to bore anybody by just listing a lot of unfamiliar names, so I'll make it quick. There's the Maw, the cluster of black holes that surrounds the planet Kessel, as we see in the very fun movie Solo, a Star Wars Story, which we all agree is great.
Shout out Solo, a Star Wars Story. Hashtag make Solo 2 happen.
How's the agenda going for you guys?
All three of us agree on equally.
How's that agenda working
for you? The campaign has stalled slightly. It's run into some problems lately.
It's been a struggle.
Yeah.
But we will persevere.
It's the great work we're all devoted
that's
to.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And in Legends, there's this Imperial research station called the Ma installation that was hidden in there and served as the site of superweapon testing and a Death Star prototype. It's like the Los Alamos of Star Wars or the Bikini Atoll or something. There's also a place called the Hapes Cluster. It's Hapes. I feel good. I should probably pronounce that very precisely. That's very rich and isolated because the stars are clustered so densely that it's tough to navigate. And then there's the Stygian Caldera, a nebula that protected the Sith Empire and interfered with hyperdrives. And there's also a planet called Delalt, which dates all the way back to the Han Solo stories published before Empire came out. And in that story, Han and Chewie search for the mythical treasure of this ancient tyrant called Zim the Despot, which is a very descriptive title for a despot. And that was in this isolated region called the Tion Cluster, which is also, and I'm really just clutching at straws here, but it's the source of a script in Star Wars lore called Tionese, which is essentially Star Wars Greek. Just sort of Greek characters in the Star Wars universe, which is interesting because that's what the characters on Fern's badge kind of look like. And those also show up in the Jedi texts in The Last Jedi, although, as we learn in this episode, they have a different name, right? The valedictorian sigil, it's a numerical system called Palmerish, which Kim says she's never seen used in Proto-Republic artifacts. And Christopher Ford, co-creator of the show, told Tech Raider, it was our way of trying to say there are more ancient levels of lore that goes way back and is potentially separate from the purely Republic or basic stuff we've seen in the past. He also said introducing some potentially powerful and ancient lore was something we worked really closely on with Dave Filoni and the Lucasfilm Story Group. The idea was that we didn't want to establish anything that would contradict or step on Republic history. So the idea would be that it is its own system of planets from long ago and has been largely forgotten. So the plot thickens, the mystery deepens.
Fascinating.
I love this.
I know. And in episode 1, when Fern tries to scare Wim by saying the last kid who skipped assessment, the proctor took him down to a secret chamber under the school to make him work in the mines. Seems like she's making it up, but maybe the mines element of that, maybe there's some kernel of truth there.
That's Mal's pet theory. I love that.
I think so.
Yeah.
I feel like everything she's saying in these tall tales stems from some real thing in the history of the planet.
Yeah. Maybe her mom told her about that at some point. And in
maybe
Treasure,
she watched Silo.
Oh, yeah. That could be.
Any number of possibilities.
She also loves Rebecca Ferguson.
Yeah. And in Treasure Island, some of the treasure is missing and never found. And in Treasure Planet, they realize that the whole planet is a machine and the treasure is inside its core. And then in Delalt, that planet I was just talking about, the real vault of Zim the Despot is buried underneath the empty vault. So I suspect that whatever the treasure turns out to be, if it is some physical sort of treasure or some technology and not just the friends we made along the way, then it won't be quite what or where it's expected to be or what Jad has in his mind. And we have a whole planet full of accountants seemingly here.
Yeah.
So
and
are
analysts.
they managing their money, safeguarding their stash? Is this where the First Order's funds come from? Is
that's
the
like
connection?
very top of mind,
That's
I think, after this episode.
Very popular and convincing theory.
Yeah.
That this is like, where did all those ships come from?
Right.
Like, where did
and
they
the
fund
question
this?
still, I mean, we're only 3 episodes in, but like at this point, we can be asking, we're worried, right? Okay, boy, if this is like a funding center, it feels like that is going to be one of the bits of connective tissue. Does that mean it already is? All of our speculation about the supervisor and these like very nefarious security droids, is this already part of a funding apparatus, or will it be taken over?
Yeah. Is the act of breaking out what draws the attention of Thrawn, etc.?
Yes. Is it Wim's is
Starkiller
base Wim's fault, essentially?
Great. Hashtag blame Wim.
He wanted to make an impact on galactic affairs. And so,
the death of millions, billions, trillions, the Hosnian system, it's all on Wim's hands.
Alderaan, a nice little preview for what's to come.
Yes, exactly. Because he just couldn't just go to school and take his assessment and get a nice accounting or analyst job. He had to go gallivanting off to the stars and doom countless citizens of the galaxy. And I meant to mention last week, because I know you always appreciate a Star Trek smuggle, Joe, that this does remind me very much of one of those planets that the Enterprise stumbles across, and there's an away team that goes down, and it's clear that something sort of nefarious is happening here, and there's some sort of AI, some supercomputer that is maybe benevolent or began as benevolent, but now it's on the fritz, it's malfunctioning, or maybe the people, the inhabitants, have forgotten how to manage their own affairs. So it sort of seems like something like that is happening.
Yeah.
Like we need Kirk to kick the computer and stop it from smoking or something.
I love that as a Star Trek reference. I went Doctor Who. We were talking about this last week a little bit, like this idea of rogue tech that thinks it's doing good but is doing ill, or is either evil tech. I love a story about evil tech, or is tech that has misunderstood the prompt,
right?
And is keeping everyone on track because it thinks it's what is good for them or is what it's supposed to do, but in fact it's just trapped them on a planet,
right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and over the eons, they have lost some capacity to control their own destinies and forgotten how to do stuff without the helping hand of the computer. I love that there's so much to chew on in this series, because I was not expecting this. And John Watts told the LA Times, co-creator, House of Our guest, he told the paper just this week that the revelations in episode 3 are just the tip of the iceberg.
Exciting.
So clearly there's more here. And
how many more kitten owls do we get to visit in the galaxy for information?
Hopefully,
are we going to
more.
get to hear Jod say just the tip at any point? That's really the question.
That's the real question
that I have.
Yeah, the owl species. The Star Wars website databank did not identify Kim's species and just said, this is an unknown species. This is like the Yoda Yaddle species. The owls and the little green people are just hanging out somewhere. And
Neil,
I think we have to call it a cat owl or an owl cat. Can't just be an owl. Like the eyes, the whiskers, the nose.
Oh, it's definitely
this
an
is
owl
a cat. Yeah. Like, and then it flies like an owl.
Well, Neil's folks also don't have a species, right? So I'm excited. Why not?
Yeah.
Great.
Me too. I love just being confronted with new stuff in Star Wars. So this, the 9 Jewels of the Old Republic or the Palmarish numerals, all of this is new. And obviously there's a lot of related lore that perhaps inspired this in some way. And we can speculate about how that might apply to the show. But there's a barrier around the mysteries here that's pretty opaque to us too. And again, this is a surprise to me because I expected Goonies meets Star Wars. That's what this was billed at. This is what it's been. And it has executed on that mandate very well and does that really well. And if that's all it was, I would still be enjoying it and having a fun time in the Star Wars world. But there's all this other stuff for us too. Just super obscure Easter eggs and lots of lore and fodder for Theory Corner. And I just did not know that the show would have that element to it, that it would have that kind of depth. So something for everyone.
Thrilling stuff. In this episode, we heard Jod say of Kim, an old friend, expert on star maps, lost planets, that kind of thing. It's like how we talk about you. So
yes,
it's all really coming together.
Are you more intrigued by the true nature of Jod or the true nature of Adeniran?
I think you know the answer.
We're Team Jod over here.
This podcast is nothing if not on brand.
By true nature, I mean, I just mean his background, his training. That's solely what I'm referring to here. Yes.
Exactly that. Just so.
Yes.
No, I think genuinely, like the fact that we have multiple compelling mysteries that feel like they're operating in the perfect harmony, like at just the right frequency with the charm and rhythm of the show so far is like such a wonderful surprise. We have a lot of questions that are fun to talk about and noodle on, and it's also just been really fun to hang out with these characters for 3 episodes so far. I'm already sad we only have 5 left. Hope we get to meet some cool bounty hunters now that the Brutus, my guy Brutus, has put a bounty out.
Your guy? Your guy?
Solo and the pups.
You love an evil pirate wolf? Is that?
Let me say this about Brutus in the interest of candor. As you know, I had some questions about Brutus last week. However, when the very well-made fuel line was swinging in to Port Borgo at lethal speed, and Brutus just stood his fucking ground, I was like, that's sick.
Yeah. I also was not expecting the caliber of the action set pieces that we're getting in this show. This is just one of the best looking Star Wars series we've seen lately, which is maybe a low bar, but nonetheless, I'm impressed. It's almost like they didn't have to go this hard with the show, and yet they are. And it is fun to hang out with these characters and also with you characters. So I'm glad that I have an excuse to talk to you.
Thanks, Ben Jar. You're the best.
Thanks, Ben Jar. Bye, pal. All right, Joe. We hit Theory Corner throughout the pod today. We hit Theory Corner with Ben. So let's go to Easter eggs. Did you have a favorite Easter egg in this episode of television, Crimson Joe Robinson?
It's gotta be Hondo ship at Port Wargo. Our guy Hondo.
Thrill of my life. The thrill of my life.
The potential.
Are you content to settle for Hondo Easter eggs, or do you need the fucking genuine article?
Like I said, genuine article. Like I said, I don't need this show to connect strongly, and I don't need a lot of cameos or crossovers or whatever. So actually, I'm happy with just a ship. I don't need Hondo to show up. What about you?
I think everything we got with Hondo in Clone Wars and Rebels is so perfect that I feel sustained for life. However, I am prepared to say on this podcast and others in the future that if we get like 18 episodes with Vane in live action, we're going to need to balance that out at some point with the return of Hondo. We're going to need to. We are.
Okay. Are you saying that, like, if you were to encounter you from the past, and you from the past is like, which Star Wars pirate will cross over to multiple TV shows? Would you say, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me?
I would either say that in my best impression of you impersonating Kim, or if I went back and encountered myself from the past and the purpose of the interaction was to talk about some sort of Star Wars pirate thing, I would probably say in December of 2024, you guys are going to get an email at Hobbits and Dragons where you learn that a bad baby thought you were talking about Vane the whole time instead of Cobb Van. That might be what I did.
Speaking of bad babies, can I tell you a quick story?
Please.
We have all the time in the world, right? Our listener, Kenny, I don't know if Kenny's listening to these episodes and if Kenny is still listening this far into the podcast, but Kenny, if you're still listening, Kenny wrote an email saying he was talking to his wife about like how House of R was his most listened to podcast on like Spotify Wrapped or whatever. So thank you again once everyone for tagging us on their Spotify Wrapped. And his wife goes, "Oh, so you're a bad bunny then?" And which is just so sweet. So bad babies, if you also want to be called bad bunnies, let us know. I thought that was really cute.
Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Delightful.
Like she was like trying to like she knows the podcast and she was like trying to connect with him and she got almost right. And I love that. So thank you to Kenny. Shout out to Kenny. Shout out to Kenny's wife, whose name I don't know. And you're all the best.
Bad babies, bad bunnies, bad cat owls, owl cats. I don't know where we landed on that exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone's welcome here. This is great. Today we had a few people who we welcomed in.
Yeah.
Mike Wargon. Here with us today to produce this episode, and definitely our smoothest start to finish, no interruptions or anything Mike has to rearrange in the edit that anybody could have had on a Friday.
Smooth as silk. Smooth as a bowl of blue goop. Just
so thank you, Mike. Thank you, of course, as always, to John Richter. Thank you to Arjuna Ramgopal for production supervision, Jomi Adeniran for the social media, and today, Cameron Dinwiddie for video editing. We will see you next week for Craven.
Somehow.
In some form. Rohirrim. Skelly episode 4. And then we're going to be together even more than that next week because we're banking pods for the holiday. I get to just soak up so much Crimson Joe next week. I can't fucking wait. It's going to be great.
War of the Johirim. Let's go.
Incredible. Until then, we really just have one request. Don't forget about the rat that lives in his eye hole.